Silent Hill 2 is considered to be one of the most well-known and significant survival horror games due to its hauntingly beautiful music, emotional and psychological themes, and for its very human themes of regret, sorrow, and forgiveness. Silent Hill 2 is the story of James Sunderland, whose wife Mary had passed 3 years prior to the events of the game. He receives a letter from her after her death, telling him that she is waiting for him at their special place in Silent Hill. So the game starts with James heading to Silent Hill to investigate how is it possible that his dead wife sent him a letter, and is she really waiting for him there in their special place? Join me today as we go over a list of 20 nasty things in Silent Hill 2. Content and spoiler warning for Silent Hill 2, including the endings and the well-known plot twist. The game is over 20 years old, by the way, so I don't think it's going to be a surprise to a lot of people. Credit to the fandom wiki for bits and pieces of the lore here and there. Just a side note, though the town is called Silent Hill, it can be noisy and there are no hills. I feel the name Silent Hill is misleading. A better, more honest name would have been Foggy Plains or Moderately Noisy Town next to a lake. Anyway, just something I noticed this last playthrough, there are no hills in the game. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. Alright, starting off our list strong with number 1, Pyramid Head. Of course, I'd be starting this list with Pyramid Head, the iconic pursuing enemy that hunt James throughout his journey in Silent Hill. Pyramid Head is one of the most recognizable figures in the Silent Hill franchise. We first meet him in the Woodside Apartments in this great reveal. As James is walking down the halls of the apartment building, Pyramid Head will be waiting and watching you from the far side of some bars that block your progress. He just stands there and watches. He doesn't move or do anything, appearing to be examining his prey. Pyramid Head has a very large and heavily muscular build. Often, he appears to be wearing a butcher's bloody apron. He will often be seen dragging his iconic great knife on the floor, causing his signature telltale scraping sound that announces his presence. His appearance is, of course, topped off by the titular Pyramid Head. We get the first pieces of the lore when we visit the Silent Hill Historical Society, where paintings and artifacts relating to the town's old executioners are stored. The executioners of olden times in Silent Hill would wear the same outfit and pyramid that we see Pyramid Head wearing in modern times. Pyramid Head will be a recurring threat pursuing James during his time in Silent Hill, encountering him multiple times, but we'll cover more about that in the later entries of this list. Number 2, the Line Figure. A big part of Silent Hill 2's enduring legacy is that most of the monsters encountered are believed to represent different parts of James' psyche. The Line Figure is the first monster that James will encounter. They are fairly weak and easy to manage. Their attacks don't do much damage, but that doesn't make them any less off-putting or disgusting. The Line Figure will appear as a flesh-covered person in a straitjacket that attacks by launching clouds of some corrosive fume or liquid at James. Most of the Silent Hill community will agree that the Line Figure represents James's feeling of being restrained or captured by the circumstances that he was in, and his feeling unable to do anything about it. The Line Figure has arms that it can't use, and it can't really interact with its environment, being forced to just watch the world around it. These creatures were born from James's feeling of confinement. Also, the Line Figure could have been the inspiration for the molded being in the Void in Fear and Hunger 1. Number 3, the Mannequin, the second enemy type encountered in Silent Hill 2. In keeping with the traditions of body horror in these types of games, the Mannequin will appear as the bottom half, the legs, of 2 different mannequin dolls merged together at the waist, making for a monster that is up-down symmetric, both walking and attacking with his 4 different legs. This perversion of the human form won't pose a major threat to James, but they will contribute to the general unsettling atmosphere of Silent Hill. The mannequin legs will also have braces on each set, which are similar to the ones Mary would have used when she was in the hospital. The mannequins remind James of his memories of his wife, the hospital, and what he did to her, and how it still haunts and torments him. The bobblehead nurses. Along with Pyramid Head, the nurses are probably one of the most iconic monsters in Silent Hill. Bubblehead nurses are dark world monsters that are roughly the same height as Mary, dressed in low-cut Brookhaven hospital uniforms. Their faces seem bloodied and covered with bandages that obscure most of their heads and faces. If you take a second to observe the nurses, they will sometimes stop and twitch, as if they are attempting to shake off the bandages and coverings on their heads. Their swollen heads represent Mary's condition when she was sick, and their shrieking represent Mary's anger and verbal abuse against James. They will present a little bit more of a threat than the lion figures or the mannequins. They attack faster and hit harder. After the transformation to the other world in the hospital, nurses will be found all over the place in the streets of the dark version of Silent Hill. Their sexualized appearance is said to represent James coping with his own feelings regarding his sexuality and frustration. Okay, moving on to the good stuff. Number 5, sticking your arm into a filled toilet. Okay, so this one was stuck in my dirty head since the first time I played this game, way back in the before times when I was just a young whippersnapper on the college campus making an ass of myself all the time. Exploring the apartment buildings, the first major area of the game, James will find a fire escape that opens directly into the window of the next building over, making for a grievous safety violation since there is no fire escape. But I suppose that doesn't really matter now. In room 203, James will find what no one ever wants to find: a backed up toilet with a brownish murky mess filling it. James, being the very special human that he is able to immediately recognize that if he is to survive the ordeal here in Silent Hill, he'd need to reach into the toilet. James is such a hard ass that he doesn't even roll up his sleeve. He just sticks his entire arm and sleeve into what is potentially a toilet full of poo-poo caca. Reaching deep into the toilet, he finds the source of the obstruction, a wallet. In this wallet, James will find a 4-number combination to a safe nearby. If he unlocks the safe, he will find some handgun bullets that he will never need, considering how much ammo this game gives you. So, James stuck his arm into the toilet for no reason, other than maybe he liked to stick his arm into dark, nasty places. On that note, number 6, holes. James is a simple man. If he sees a hole, he would not be able to resist himself and either stick his arm into the unknown or take a plunge into a dark abyss. He's the type of man that sees a donut and feels compelled to stuff it with a donut hole. In the first phases of his journey in the apartment buildings, James will enter a room filled with moths in the apartment complex. The former tenant might have been an insect collector, or perhaps this is a reference to Rayla in Fear Hunger 2 Termina. In the moth room, James will notice a dark hole in the wall, a hole like so many hole in the walls he had seen before, but this one looked special. It had a special allure. Doing what comes naturally to him, he sticks his arm in after a quick inspection and manages to find the clock key, which he will need to continue his journey and the exploration of the apartment buildings. Later on in his journey, James will enter the Historical Society building, and then the underwater prison and the labyrinth, right before reaching the Lakeview Hotel, his final destination. Here, we'll see one of the most iconic bits of Silent Hill 2, this motif or recurring theme of holes in the ground that the protagonist will then jump into. We'll also see this in later survival horror games like Signalis and Fear and Hunger. Many analysts and commentary will mention on how this represents James taking a plunge into the unknown, pushing forward in his journey, or it could represent James crossing a point of no return. I think James just likes holes in the ground and likes jumping through them. Whee! During the mid to late part of the game, James would jump and drop down through no less of 5 different holes in the ground before reaching the very bottom of the labyrinth and the Toluca prison. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Number 7. Eddie. Eddie is a character. He is the type of guy that you hope eventually finds a partner or a girlfriend, as long as it's not anybody you know or care about. Eddie's introduction sets the tone in regards to what to expect from him. We find him in the apartment building, deep in prayer to the porcelain god. Oh, that reminds me of so many blurry college nights. Loudly puking, James will approach him, and we start to learn about Eddie's motivations that led to him ending up in Silent Hill. Eddie's backstory will share a lot of similarities with James's. Over a few encounters, we will learn that this man, dressed like a child with bad taste, has been a victim of bullying and mockery. Or at least he seems to think so. The man-child had gotten a taste for violence when he killed a dog that he claims was mocking him. We know that's not possible, dogs can't speak, but considering how Eddie dresses, I can see where the dog was coming from. Eddie embraces his new joy of violence, killing other people that he thought were mocking him. Eddie appears almost eager to dish it out. The poison of wrath has taken deep root in him. We run into Eddie one last time in what looks like a meat packing facility underground. Eddie has become more and more paranoid that he is being mocked and has become convinced that James is also making fun of him. Eddie starts to get violent. James is left with no option but to put an end to Eddie's murder spree. Once injured and near death, we see that Eddie's behavior seems to change. He starts to act like an injured or hurt dog, like the one he killed. Eddie will stop being so aggressive and start to run and hide, possibly hoping James forgets about him and doesn't finish him off. So James will have to hunt the injured Eddie down to put an end to his sad story. We never find out if Eddie was really bullied or if it was all in his head, or if he just wanted an excuse to be violent. Maria. Maria is possibly the most iconic human character in Silent Hill 2 other than James. Maria is a sexualized, flirty version of James's late wife Mary. She comes off as more confident, playful, and wears more revealing clothing than Mary. At times, appearing to flirt and trying to entice James. At times, yelling at him and mocking him for trying to find Mary. At times, Maria appears to have memories in common with Mary. She knew James's name, and she also knew about Mary. Maria also seems to display a strong concern for Laura, even though they just met. So it's possible that Maria is also carrying some of Mary's memories. Maria represents an idealized version of James's wife that only caters to his needs and wants, a selfish interpretation of Mary. Maria will function as an anchor, holding James back in the past and trying to stop him from healing and learning from his mistakes and moving on. She constantly tempts James with a future he wanted and couldn't have. Maria will travel with James at different portions of his journey. James will have to watch Maria die 3 times. Once being chased in the hallway in the hospital by Pyramid Head, once underground in the labyrinth off screen, and once in the finale. Her repeated deaths and reappearances represents a vicious cycle where someone tries the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different outcome. But we'll revisit some of these themes towards the end of this video when we talk about the conclusion of the story. Number 9. The flesh slip fight in the hospital. After meeting Eddie and Laura in the bowling alley, Maria and James will follow Laura to the Brookhaven Hospital. After exploring the hospital, James will find Laura on the 3rd floor. Laura will lead James down the hall and then trick him into going to a specific room and then locking him in it. And then she runs away. That's when the flesh slip monsters make their appearances. The flesh slips will be easily recognizable due to their appearance of a body stuck in a box, their quickly moving lips, the weird sounds they make, and their cute little hanging feet. James will have to fight 3 of these monsters in a small room if he is to continue on his journey. First, he'll be attacked by 2 of them, and the 3rd one spawning a little bit later on. According to the wiki, the flesh lips represents Mary's mouth with which she hurled abuse at James in her last days, as her disease got worse and worse. The cage, or box, represents Mary's being trapped in a hospital bed as she got sicker and sicker. Fortunately, they are not too tough. They move slowly, giving James a chance to dodge around them. Also, when you defeat them, their little hanging feet curl up. I don't know why, I just find that really cute. I mean, look at the little feetsies. Number 10. Brookhaven Hospital. Continuing the tradition of Silent Hill featuring a medical setting, we have the Brookhaven Hospital, a hospital where it appears like writing on the walls with blood has become a normal thing to do. Like mentioned earlier, James and Myra will end up in the Brookhaven Hospital in pursuit of Laura. The hospital, like the rest of the town, is in disrepair, dark, and disgusting. Being in the Brookhaven Hospital will no doubt bring anguish to James, reminding him of his and Mary's time in the hospital as Mary's disease progressed. The hospital appears suddenly abandoned and in disarray. Tarps and papers are littered everywhere, bed and boxes covered in sheets. The hospital will also be the first place where James hears the iconic air raid siren and visit an otherworldly location. After transitioning to the otherworld, the hospital will appear covered in rust. The wallpaper and the paint on the walls will peel and reveal orange and red support beams and rust. The floor will give way and reveal grating, showing vast empty spaces beneath James's feet. The otherworld is designed to trigger every vulnerability and sensibility most people will have to make them feel as lost, in danger, and scared as possible, creating a truly unsettling nightmare environment. Also, there's a puzzle where you fish a key out of a drain using a bit of hair and a bent pin. Laura is an orphan that became close friends with Mary at the end, when they were both patients at the same hospital. If James is able to learn, grow, overcome, and break the cycle, the happy ending will see James leaving Silent Hill with Laura, telling us that he will honor Mary's wishes and raise Laura as his own. The reason I'm listing her on this list is because during the events of the game, Laura can be fucking frustrating at times. First, she kicks the key out of your reach on the 3rd floor of the apartment building. When you meet her next, she yells at James that he never loved Mary. When you meet Eddie and Laura at the bowling alley, she'll fat shame Eddie and run away. After following her to the hospital, Laura will trick James into going to a room in Brookhaven Hospital. Laura will lock James in a room in the hospital where he is attacked by the flesh-lipped monsters, and then she promptly runs away. Approaching the conclusion of the game, entering the main hall of Lakeview Hotel, Laura scares the shit out of James and myself when she bangs on the piano suddenly, rupturing the silence. Laura will hand James the last letter Mary wrote her, congratulating her on her 8th birthday. James asks Laura how old she is now, to which she replies that she is still 8 years old, suggesting that Mary didn't die 3 years ago, like James has believed during the events of the game. We meet Laura once again in the hotel a little bit later, after the revelation in room 312 with the VHS tape. James will confess to Laura what he really did to Mary. Laura will then yell at James and tell him that she hates him again, calls him a killer, to which James apologizes, which is fair enough given what James just confessed to. Laura will then storm out of the room, and if we see her again depends on what ending we get. Laura is an innocent child that shouldn't be in Silent Hill, but I just wanted to complain about how troublesome she is during the events of the game. Before continuing with the video, I have a plug, and I need to do a capitalism. If you enjoy my channel, and you would like to help make sure I don't have to spend any time looking for a job and trying to re-enter the job market, consider becoming a member of the channel. For just $3 a month, you can get access to all of my videos, long form and shorts, as soon as I upload them. So that's generally anywhere from 1 to 2, sometimes even 3 days in advance. So consider checking that out if you'd like to watch my videos as soon as they're uploaded and before anybody else. At the Gaming King level, I will give you a shout out at the end of all my long form videos. To become a member of the channel, all you have to do is click the join button
right below this video and next to the like button. And of course, any help is a big load off of my mind and helps me stress out a little bit less about my bills. Anyway, thank you and back to the video.
Angela's story and the abstract daddy. I'm going to be a little bit vague and dance around some things on this one, since I don't want the video to be demonetized, and also I'm not sure I'm the best person to be tackling some of these issues, given how important and damaging they can be. We initially meet Angela in the graveyard outside town, where she mentions that she was looking for her brother and her father. What she doesn't mention is if her brother and father would be 6 feet under. Nevertheless, she is helpful in this first encounter and gives James directions to the town of Silent Hill. Angela is later found in the apartment building, laying on the floor, focusing on the knife that she's holding. But after a talk, she gives the knife to James and heads out on her way. We can notice that Angela dresses in a very modest way, completely covering her body, possibly to avoid drawing attention from interested men or to cover the bruises that she might have due to abuse. Much later in the final portion of the game, we encounter Angela again in the labyrinth. In this version of the other world, we will see the walls covered in flesh, decorated with pistons thrusting in and out of holes in the wall. Here, we will encounter the abstract daddy boss fight. This monster resembles a person pinning another person down on a table, resembling what Angela had told us she had suffered at the hands of her father and brother. James will fight the monster as it shambles back and forth across a small room. Fortunately, he moves pretty slowly, giving James a chance to dodge him and fight back. After defeating the abstract daddy, Angela will scream, kick, and throw a TV at it. It's easy to tell that Angela is working through a lot of feelings at the moment. She then focuses her fear on James, telling him that they are all the same, that they only want one thing from her, that people are willing to take from her regardless of what she wants, before storming out of the room. In the conclusion, we tragically encounter Angela one last time in the otherworld version of the hotel. She's found standing on a burning stairway between two blood-stained corpses stitched to frames on the walls, representing her murdered brother and father. At first, she appears to be lost in her own world, even thinking that James is her mother, but eventually coming to and recognizing James for who he really is. She wonders if what happened to her is her fault, if maybe somehow she deserved it, trying to rationalize it. She then asks if she can have the knife back from James. When we speak to her, she appears calm and at peace with the fate that she has decided for herself. At least her pain will soon be at an end. Angela starts climbing the flame-covered stairs. James comments on the heat, to which Angela replies, "You see it too? For me, it's always like this," referring to the invisible pain and scars victims of assault will carry with them. She then climbs the stairs into the flames, and that's the last that we see of Angela in Silent Hill. I think it's a very easy argument to make that given all the nasty things Angela has survived, that she is the only sympathetic character of the three adults in Silent Hill 2. The underground prison and the historical society. Securing the key to the historical society from Rosewater Park, where we first met Maria, James will then head to the historical society building as part of his goal to reach their special place, the Lakeview Hotel. Entering the historical society, James will quickly find a hole in the ground that will lead him to the underground prison here. James will explore the partially flooded prison, needing to find a way further down to reach the labyrinth. The prison is in a state of advanced decay and filled with lying figures. Here, James will have to solve the tablet gallows puzzle in order to get the horseshoe he needs to open the latch that will allow him to continue further down. The floor will be flooded, the walls will be running with water and covered with rust. The prison wings are flooded, dirty, infected, and depressing. We never get an explanation as to why this prison is built this far underground, but we can assume that it has to do with the town's occult past and its worship of the old gods. Between references to the executioners in the historical society and the gallows, we can assume that the prison was also used as an execution site. The holes that James has been jumping down through have been used for quickly disposing of bodies, kinda like the flesh pit in Fear and Hunger. Prisoners here would be given the option of death by hanging or skewering, so that they may have one last illusion of freedom before meeting their end. So here's something that always stood out to me about the prison. James will always face to turn to look at nearby enemies or objects of interest. Exploring the north prison wing, James will turn to look at something inside of one of these cells. Since the camera angles are fixed, we have no way of looking at what James is seeing. We can only hear the sounds of a monster in that cell. We have no in-game way of being able to see what it looks like. I just thought that was a cool little touch that adds to the mystery of this nasty area. Mary's true fate. Okay, so last spoiler warning for this game that's over 20 years old. We are about to talk about the major plot point at the end that I've been hinting at. Having reached the hotel across Toluca Lake, James enters the room where he and Mary spent so many happy days. Their special place, room 312. A place that reminds James of better times and what could have been if things had played out differently. James finds a VHS tape that's going to take the ugly truth of what he did and throw it in his fucking face so that he can no longer hide from the truth. James's wife, Mary, didn't die from a terminal disease. She was sick and terminally ill, but Mary met her fate at the hands of her husband James. James couldn't deal with the pain and suffering of his wife's disease, along with everything that came with it. He was stuck in his suffering, and not his wife's. And it broke him to see her health decline, and for him to lose the future that he would have had with her. Unable to cope with his pain, James picks up a pillow and suffocates Mary. He wanted it all to end, and he thought that this was a way out. Just like Eddie and Angela, James was suffering and wanted it to stop, and went to extreme measures to stop his torment. This is why he was called to Silent Hill, to atone for his sins. It's these sins why Pyramid Head manifested. So Pyramid Head is nothing more than a way for James to torment himself for his incredibly selfish handling of his wife's disease and the nasty things that he has done since. Number 15, the hotel's final fate. During most of his time in Silent Hill, James has been trying to reach their special place, Lakeview Hotel, a seemingly charming hotel resort built next to Toluca Lake. And here is where our story will reach its conclusion. The hotel is now in disarray and abandoned, and small abstract daddies are patrolling the hallways, a stark difference from the happy times when James and Mary would vacation here. At one point, James finds a can, and opening it with a can opener, finds that it's filled with light bulbs. I just thought that was very weird, and I wanted to mention that there's a can of light bulbs in this game. James starts to explore the hotel, trying to reach room 312, where he finds a tape mentioned in the previous entry of this list. James hears a message over the radio from Mary, telling him to come find her, that she is close by. After confronting the ugly truth of what he did, James snaps back to reality and is now able to see the otherworldly version of the hotel, which is the real version of how the hotel looks now. Since their last visit, the hotel had burned down and is now a run-down, blighted ruin of a building. The pristine version that he had seen was just his senses and his memory playing tricks on him, trying to create a gentler reality for him. His eyes were deceiving him, showing him what he wanted to see. Exploring the remaining bits of the hotel, James will start to notice that physics and space appear to be distorting and behaving unexpectedly. It is in this context that James will enter a flooded hallway and make his way to the final area of the game and the climax. Number 16, impossible spaces. Another recurring motif that's very prominent at the end of Silent Hill is impossible spaces or physics. At various times throughout the game, there will be times when James walks down a hall or an elevator shaft that just keeps going and going, seemingly forever, much longer than you'd ever expect a hallway or an elevator ride to take. Much longer than you'd ever expect a real hallway to be. These long hallways stretch out further than anything reasonable. The first one will be descending into the Historical Society. James will travel a stairway that seems to go on forever. The second one will be right before confronting Eddie near the prison. In the otherworldly version of the hotel, James will also encounter doors that transport him across the hotel to other wings of the building, making navigation here all the more difficult, since it appears that James is stepping into portals that are teleporting around the hotel randomly. Impossible physical spaces have become a staple in survival horror, with variants of this theme present in games like Darkwood, with the endless hallway at the end, and Signalis, in the area called Nowhere. It's often used to demonstrate that the player is in an area with a loose affiliation with reality, or to show that the player is in an otherworldly location that operates on different rules. The purpose is to demonstrate that reality is warped, and what is considered real is distorted and twisted. These impossible spaces make for a nasty navigating experience in survival horror games. The final confrontation with Pyramid Head. After being chased and tormented by him during the entire game, we have the final encounter with Pyramid Head. Going to the back of the burnt out hotel, through the now open shutters, James enters a hallway where the architecture changes to a brutalist, concrete industrial style. The doors have changed. They look mystical, arcane, and made of stone, looking as if from a different era, rather than the type of doors you would expect at a modern tourist hotel. We travel down hallways that are connected to the hotel, but don't appear to be part of it, defying what you logically expect in terms of layout. In the otherworldly location that James is transported to from the ruined hotel, James will enter a large open room and discover not one, but two Pyramid Heads. Pyramid Head was manifested to torment and punish James for his sin of taking life. Now that he has killed a second time, another Pyramid Head has manifested. Before starting the fight, we see that the Pyramid Heads have strung up another incarnation of Myra. They quickly and brutally execute her again, which clearly torments James. The final fight with the Pyramid Heads will start at this point. James will use the space in the room to evade the Pyramid Heads and dodge their attacks with the Great Spears. It's during this time that James finally realizes that he has manifested Pyramid Head as part of his self-loathing, as a punishment for himself to quell his guilt over the murder of first Mary and then Eddie. He realizes that he cannot win this fight with violence, but rather with forgiveness. James learns that he needs to forgive himself for his actions and weaknesses, and accept that he has made mistakes, which he needs to own up to. He cannot keep running. This is a fight that he cannot win with force. Upon realizing this, the two Pyramid Heads stop attacking. They walk to the center of the room, stake their spears onto the floor, and impale their heads on it. James does not need Pyramid Head anymore, and can finally start to move on. James is learning to heal and forgive. With a spear through his head, Pyramid Head has finally completed his purpose. The final confrontation with Mary or Myra. Throughout the game, we have been getting hints that if James favors Myra, he will be repeating the same mistakes of the past and will be condemning himself to repeat the events that played out with Mary's disease. Repeatedly in his journey through Silent Hill, we will see Myra coughing or taking pills, seemingly to help manage some disease. This is a direct reference to Mary's disease, which Myra might also be carrying. This insinuates that James might be tempted to take the easy way out and try to replace Mary with Myra, and repeat all the same events surrounding Mary's death, having learned nothing. The final confrontation of the game will depend on how James has behaved during the events. Did he take care of himself? Or did he spend a lot of time rereading Mary's letter, dwelling on the knife that Angela gave him, and growing close to Myra? In one set of endings, James will fight a version of Myra dressed up like Mary. This version of Myra will confront James, asking if he wants her. When turned down, she would transform into the final boss. In the Myra ending, Mary will appear angry at James for favoring Myra, implying that James hasn't learned is being selfish, and will repeat the entire cycle all over again with a sick Myra. After defeating Pyramid Head, James is transported back to the hotel. The hotel doors are now replaced with the arcane stone doors. We go down the hallway and see that it's changed. It's become a much longer hallway, longer than anything we've seen in the hotel. We hear a very difficult conversation between James and Mary, where Mary reveals how she's been feeling like a monster and how she might be better off dead. The door at the end of the hallway opens up into a large water collecting cistern. James takes the stairs that look like they belong in a construction site up to the roof, where it opens up and reveals that the roof of the structure has been removed. The final boss will appear a little bit like the flesh lip monster that we fought in Brookhaven Hospital. She will appear like a human body covered in filth, suspended upside down in a flying metal frame, and dressed kinda like a nun. She will be twitching rapidly like so many enemies here in Silent Hill. This creature will attack James using her tentacles and by deploying moth swarms at him. The monster goes down, and as it lays dying, it calls out James's name until James pulls the trigger and ends it. After defeating her, we will get one of several endings depending on the choices James made throughout the game, depending if he has learned and is able to grow as a person and move on with his life or not. Regardless of what ending plays out, we get to read the letter that Mary left for James. Mary expresses regret that she wasn't good enough for James, that she felt pathetic and defective, suggesting that he might be better off without her. Confessing all of her fears as she approaches the end of her life, she laments the way that things played out for them. We hear her regret regarding how she treated James and confesses that she always loved him. She even apologizes for falling sick. But at the end, she honestly and wholeheartedly confesses, "James, you made me happy." Alright, number 19, the endings. There are a few different endings to the game, only one of which I think we can call as a good ending. In the Leave ending, James confronted his demons and sins, and is able to grow as a person. James will leave Silent Hill with Laura, adopting her as his own and fulfilling Mary's last wish. In the Maria ending, James didn't learn. He grew attached to Maria and didn't take care of himself. He also dwelled on ending things with the knife that Angela gave him. He will leave Silent Hill with Maria, who is sick, and repeat the cycle of loss and pain that played out with Mary. In the Water ending, James realizes that his wife's deceased body is still in the trunk of his car. He didn't learn, he didn't heal, he didn't grow, he didn't move on. He will return to his car and Maria's body in it. He will drive into Toluca Lake. The Rebirth ending is only available on New Game Plus. James will collect a series of occult items scattered across the town and invoke the old gods of Silent Hill and attempt to resurrect Mary. The last we see of him is James rowing to the center of the lake with Mary's body in order to perform the ritual. So things will play out in a nasty way for James in all but one ending. There is no canon ending to the game, but here's what I think happens to James. The newspaper headlines the next day read, "Man suspected of chainsaw rampage in abandoned town, found with kidnapped orphan, suspected of double murder." When you think about it, James just murdered 2 people. Maybe it's not a good time for him to be adopting orphans. Number 20, Bark Bark, Myra. I wanted to end this one on a lighter note. If the player has completed the 3 normal endings, or the Rebirth ending, a doghouse will spawn across the street from Rosewater Park, where we first met Maria. James will then be able to find the dog key in the doghouse. If James uses the dog key in the observation room on the 3rd floor of the Lakeview Hotel, he will learn the truth about everything that happened in Silent Hill. Using the key and entering a mysterious room, James will find a Shiba Inu called Myra. Myra will be found holding the levers of some sort of contraption or machine, to which James will say, "It was all your work?" and then collapse to his knees. The Shiba Inu would then hop down and lick James. Look at her, isn't she just the cutest? Anyways, I'd like to thank you for your time and for watching my entire video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did making it. Be sure to comment, like, share, and all that jazz if you'd like to help me out and help me with the channel. But so long for now. Thank you, see you soon, and later.